This video will show you how to set up one of the more challenging parts of an MLA format paper, your Works Cited page. While we won't focus on how to format individual Works Cited entries, we'll talk about how to use Microsoft Word to make your Works Cited page work for you a little bit more easily. Let's imagine that you've already put together your Works Cited page with everything but the formatting. It's here at the end of your paper, you've got each of your Works Cited entries formatted the way that they're supposed to be, and all that remains is making sure that it looks the way that it's supposed to according to MLA style. There are two things that you need to do to bring this Works Cited page into accordance with MLA format. First, we have to make sure that it starts on a new page. Second, we have to deal with the indentation. As we've seen with most pieces of MLA style, there are good ways and bad ways to set things up. With the Works Cited page, making sure that it starts on a new page is another problem that students can solve in lots of different ways. Here are two that I don't recommend. Many students will create a new document for their Works Cited page, and then try to remember to print out both documents when the time comes to turn in the paper. This means a number of extra steps, in part because you have to make sure that you're updating the header in your second document to match the page number in your first document. It also makes it very easy to forget one document or the other. The second thing that students do that doesn't work very well is just hit enter a bunch of times to make sure that it starts on a new page. On the one hand, this works okay in that we have our Works Cited page starting on a new page. But as we've seen before, setting things up this way means that whenever we add or remove something from our paper, it's going to move everything else around too. As soon as I decide to delete this sentence, there's the header of our Works Cited page popping back up into the middle of our document. So hitting enter isn't the best solution here either. Instead, Microsoft Word again gives us a tool to accomplish exactly what we need. The tool is called a page break. In the Insert banner, you'll notice a button that says Page Break. What a page break does is ensures that wherever your cursor is, if you insert a page break, it'll always start a new page at exactly that place, no matter what comes before. Now, I can add and delete to my heart's content, and my Works Cited page stays in the same place. The second big thing you'll need to do to format your Works Cited page according to MLA style is apply what is called a hanging indent. Before we talk about how to do that, let's look at what that's supposed to look like. And again, I'll show you some ways not to do it. Here's an isolated example of a Works Cited page entry. If you're like most writers, for each paragraph, in order to indent your paragraph, you hit enter and then you hit tab. This is a pretty good way to do it as far as paragraphs go, and usually that's about what I do when I'm writing my paragraphs. However, as you probably are aware, MLA style calls for Works Cited entries to be indented in the opposite fashion of normal paragraphs. So the first line is supposed to be flush with the margin, and the second and subsequent lines are supposed to be indented. If you're used to hitting enter and tab to indent, you might want to do the same thing with your Works Cited page entry. This absolutely looks the way that it's supposed to. But remember, Microsoft Word treats every time you hit enter as if you were starting a new paragraph, separate from what came before. Here's what that means when it comes to hitting enter in the middle of a Works Cited page entry. What if I remember that there was another writer for the article that I'm citing? As we might expect, because we've hit enter right before the name of the journal, the title now spills over onto another line, and our indentation is wrong again. What we want is for Microsoft Word to treat each Works Cited page entry as a unit. What that means is making sure that we only hit enter at the end of each Works Cited entry. Then we can tell Microsoft Word to indent each of those paragraphs the way MLA format requires. Let's look at how to do that with our complete Works Cited page. All I've done so far to set things up is type out each entry on its own line and then hit enter. If we use Microsoft Word's Show Invisible Characters symbol, this little paragraph guy up here, we can see I have a paragraph marker at the end of each Works Cited entry, and that's it. This is what happens if you just type in an entry and then hit enter. If you set up your paragraphs like this, a hanging indent is actually very easy to set up in Microsoft Word. Here's the cheatery way. Just select your whole Works Cited page, hold down Control, and hit T. Microsoft Word will do it for you automatically. The reason that this works is because it recognizes that each Works Cited entry is its own paragraph that needs to stay together, and where the first line needs to be flush with the margin, while the second and subsequent lines need to be indented. Now, if we have to add a new author to a source, Microsoft Word still handles our hanging indent correctly. In most cases, Control-T will work just fine as long as you're actually using Microsoft Word. Not everybody is. It also only does the hanging indent exactly that way. So if later on you need to use a hanging indent that has more than a half an inch, or where you have some indentation on your first line, Control-T won't help you with that. So I'll show you another simple way to make this happen. Start by going to the View menu and clicking on Ruler. On the ruler, you'll notice these symbols. They look a little bit like an hourglass. This is what controls your indentation in each paragraph, and it's a very powerful tool. By dragging each of these handles, we can make something different happen. The top handle controls the first line of each paragraph. By manipulating that, we can change where our first line begins, which means that if we drag this over a half an inch, each of our paragraphs is going to be indented just like a regular paragraph. And in fact, this is a really easy alternative to hitting tab at the beginning of each paragraph. For the purposes of a Works Cited page, it's the middle handle, the one pointing up, that is most interesting to us. That controls the indentation of the second and subsequent lines of a paragraph. If we move this over a half an inch, what we'll find is that our Works Cited page entries are now indented correctly according to MLA style. The other nice thing about using this setup is that if I have to add a new entry to my Works Cited page, all I have to do is hit enter and type in my entry, and Microsoft Word will automatically apply that hanging indent. This also means if you set your rulers like this, when you start typing your first entry, all you have to do is hit enter at the end of each line, and it'll automatically format each entry for you correctly.